Welcome to this lecture on the disease Galakanda. So this presentation includes details about the disease Galakanda, the differences between Galakanda and Gandamala, as well as uh, few of the conditions related to the thyroid gland. So what is the Pratyatma Lakshana or definition of the disease Galakanda? So mainly the references are available in Susruta Nidana as well as in case of Madhavadana, who has recorded Susruta. So the definition goes like Nibadha Shoyadhur Yasya Mushkavat Lambade Gale Mahanva Yediva Hrasvo Galagandam Tamadishet. So there is a Mushkavat swelling in the Gala Pradesha, which is Nibadha. That means Niyamena Baddho Nibadha. So that it is attached, so that it cannot be moved, it is attached. Mushkavat, the shape is Andavat, and it can be either big or small. So Mahanva Yediva Hrasvo Galagandam Tamadishet. So this is the definition of Galaganda. The name implies that there is a ganda or swelling in the Gala Pradesha. So the Samprapti is explained as Vada Kafashchaiva Gale Pravurdhau Manyetu Samsritya Tadaiva Medaha Kurvandi Gandam Kramasha Swalingai Samannidamdam Galaganda Mahu. So that there is involvement of Vada and Kapha dosha and also involvement of Medas. And this leads to a swelling in the Ganda Pradesha or in the Manya Pradesha. So we know that the thyroid can get enlarged either on the one side or bilaterally. So in the Gala Pradesha or in the Manya Pradesha. So that is known as Galaganda. And mainly Galaganda is of three types: Vadaja, Kafaja, and Medoja. And there is no Pittaja Galaganda. This has to be noted that most of the acharyas have not included Pittaja Galaganda. So Kramashah Swalingai, so that Vadaja will have Vadaja's own lingas, Kafaja will have Kafaja lakshanas, like that. So again the classification, as I told, Susruta, Vagbada and Madhavadana has included three types, that is Vadaja, Kavaja and Medoja. If you go through Charaga in the Swafadikara, he says Egaha, so that means it's one that can be taken as it's a single swelling or it's only one type, like that. Next is the features of Vadaja Galaganda. Todanyudaha Krishna Siravanadha Krishno Arunova Pavanatmakastu. So that there is Toda pain, Krishna Siravanadha, so that there is dark siras or veins appearing over the swelling. Krishno Arunova, so that gives different types of colors, dark red or blackish. That is regarding the Vadaja. And what happens is later on, when there is association of Medas, more association of Medas in the pathology, what happens is Kalat Bhavet Adhisnigdhataro Arujascha. So it may become painless and Adhisnigdha as well. So that is why Medo Annidascha Upajidascha Kalat Bhavet Adhisnigdhataro Arujascha. And some other lakshanas like Parushya Yukta Chiravruddhi Abhaga. So there can be Parushya, there is Chiravruddhi and Abhaga or Yadrichaya Bhaga. Sometimes it can go into the stage of Paga without any reason. That is Yadrichaya Paga. And systemic features like Virasya Masisya. So that there can be Asya Virasya and Talu Gala Prashosha. So that there is Shosha in the Talu and Gala Pradesh. So that is regarding Vadaja Galakanda. Next is Kafaja, Stiraha, Savarno, Alparuk, Ugrakandu, Shido, Mahaschabi, Kafatmagastu. So it is Stira, Savarna, that means skin color, Alparuk, less pain, and there is more itching, Shida, cold to touch, Mahaschabi, the swelling may be very big, it is Kafatmaga. Chirabhivriddhim, it enlarges very slowly, and Chiracha Prabhachi, the Paga also happens very slowly. Mandarujaha Kadajit. Sometimes there may be slight pain. And features like Madhurya, Asya Madhurya, and Talu Gala Praleba. A feeling of as if there is a coating in the Talu and Gala Pradesh. So that is regarding Kafaja. Next is Medoja, Snigdho, Mrudu, Panduranishta Medagrudo, Niruk, Adha, Adi Kandu. So that it is Snigdha, Mrudu, then Pandu, whitish, Anishta Gandha, there may be a foul smell, and either it is without pain or with Kandu. Pralambade Alabuvat Alpamulo. So it just like it hangs like an Alabu fala with Alpamula and large hanging swelling. So this is a lipoma in the neck. Dehanurupa Kshaya Yukta. So that depending upon the body status, the size of the swelling can change. So that when the body gets krisha, then the swelling also can get reduced. And if the body is obese, then the swelling is also more. Snigdhasyada tasya bhavecha jandur gale anushabdam kurdecha nityam. So there can be a sound in the gala pradesha, when, especially when the patient speaks, and there is snigdhasyada. So this is regarding Mayadoja. So if you look at thyroid pathologies, or Galaganda as something related to thyroid, because there are different opinions among experts regarding what Galaganda is. But when we go through this reference, what we can see is there is a single swelling and is mushkavat. So obviously it is related to thyroid. So there are a lot of pathologies that can happen to thyroid. For example, there can be autoimmune pathologies like Hashimoto's thyroiditis or Graves' disease, and there can be a what you call as a simple goiter, where without any change in the thyroid functions, the thyroid can get enlarged. And also, as we discussed in the Medoja, it can be a fat deposition as well, like as in case of lipoma. There is also another disease known as Madelung disease, where there is excessive fat deposition in the neck, then the shoulders, not only in the neck, but it can happen in other areas as well. So this is also something related to abnormal fat deposition. So I'm not exactly correlating this with Medoja Galaganda, but if you go through the references, it is similar to something similar to a abnormal fat deposition, either as a lipoma or a Madelung disease. But if you go through Kafaja, we can consider it as something like a simple goiter, because it takes too much time to get enlarged. So we can take it in that form. In case of Vataja, we may consider it as some other thyroid pathologies where there can be pain. So maybe most of the autoimmune pathologies can be considered under the concept of Vataja Galaganda. So that is regarding the disease Galaganda. And the Sadhya Sadhyada, Krichrad Uchvasandam. So whenever there is a swelling, and if the swelling is massive, it can produce compression features. So there can be difficulty in breathing. Krichrad Uchvasandam, Mrudu Sarvagatram. So that there is Mrudutva of the Sarvagatra. So if you go through the modern clinical explanations, if you go through the references regarding hyperthyroidism, in hyperthyroidism, the skin can become warm, moist, soft, velvety, and smooth, simulating the skin texture of an infant. So this may be, I'm not exactly correlating, however, this may be this Mrudu Sarva Gatram. Samvatsaraditam, which is beyond 1 year of onset. Arojagartam, the patient has arojaga. Kshinam, the patient is also kshina. Then some such patients also with bhinnaswara, there is dysphonia because of the compression. Such patients are not to be treated. So obviously this uh, indicates some sort of untreated or unmanaged case of hyperthyroidism, where there is thyroid swelling, pressure symptoms, as well as systemic features like Mrudu Sarva Gatra and Kshina of the Sharira. In hyperthyroidism, we know that obviously there will be weight loss. So this is regarding the Sadhya Sadhyata of Galaganda. Next, there is also another disease known as Gandamala, which is not related directly to this, but because of the common area of affliction, we just go through that. Karkandu Kolamalaga Pramanehi Kaksha Amsa Manya Gala Vamshaneshu Meda Kafabhya Chiramanda Page Syad Gandamala Bahubhischa Gandehi. So here Ganda is nothing but a circumscribed swelling. So he says that the size of the swelling is Karkandu, Kola or Amalaga. So it's comparatively less compared to Galaganda. And also the area also that is affected is different in terms of it can happen in Kaksha, Amsa, Manya, Gala, Vamshana. So if you go through this reference, it typically indicates a lymphadenopathy, because we know that there are lymph nodes distributed all over the body, especially in the axillary region. Then we know the cervical group of lymph nodes, that is by Amsa, Manya and Gala, and in the inguinal region. And this is also considered as a disease of Meda Kapha, Chira Manda Page, so that there is Chira Paga and Bahubishja Gandai, so there is multiple. So it can happen in the Kaksha Pradesha or in the Manya or Gala Pradesha. So that is regarding the disease Gandamala. So if you go through the modern references, obviously Galaganda and Gandamala can be considered as two different conditions, where Galaganda is something related to thyroid and Gandamala is something related to the cervical lymph nodes or any other area, lymph nodes in any other area of the body. And there is also another disease known as Abaji, where multiple swellings like this can happen. They can undergo paga and rupture, and the cycle continues. Such a disease is called as Abaji. I'm not going into detail about Abaji in this session. Next, let us discuss some of the thyroid disorders. I am not going in detail about each of the thyroid disorders because they are very elaborate and time consuming. Just to give an idea about what are the important thyroid disorders. So predominantly, these are the terminologies that comes into our mind when we deal with the thyroid disorders. There are various other disorders as well, but these are the important ones. One is the goiter, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, and thyroid cancer. These two, hypo and hyper, are not independent conditions, but they are phenomena, or they are conditions that result from either hyperactivity or hypoactivity of the thyroid gland. So they are not independent diagnosis. Before going into the abnormalities, let us look at the in short about the physiology of the thyroid. So we know that the thyroid hormones, they regulate the metabolic rate, as well as they have role in the uh, generating body temperature. So what happens is, whenever there is the metabolic rate is less, or the T3 or T4 is less in the body, it stimulates the hypothalamus to secrete the TRH, which in turn this TRH, or the thyrotropin releasing hormone, this in it's released from the hypothalamus, and this TRH stimulates the pituitary to produce the TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. This TSH in turn stimulates the thyroid and the thyroid follicles to release T3 and T4. And this T3 and T4 is bound to the proteins and taken all over the body, and it is released for its functions. The T3 is the more functional form, so that some of the T4 is also converted into T3 before being used for the metabolic purposes. And we know that there is a feedback mechanism. For example, if the T3 and T4 is elevated, then it can suppress the TRH and reduce the TSH. Vice versa, if the T3 and T4 is very less, it can stimulate the TRH, which in turn stimulates the TSH. So there is a negative feedback that is going on. So this gives you the idea about the positive and negative feedback. So hypothalamus produces the TRH, and which in turn stimulates the pituitary to produce the TSH, and TSH stimulates the follicles in the thyroid to produce T3 and T4. T4 is thyroxine and T3 is triiodothyronine, and T3 is the more active form, so that most of the T4 is also converted into T3 in the peripheral tissues. This concept we have to keep in mind whenever we have to learn the nonsenses of investigating a patient with a thyroid. So that is why please keep this in mind. T4 is also converted into T3, and whenever the T3 and T4 is more, it can produce a negative feedback. And if at all if the T3 and T4 is less, then it induces this cycle again. So this is the normal physiology. So let us see what goiter is about. So goiter simply means that it's a enlarged thyroid gland. So it may not be causing any abnormalities. For example, a simple goiter, there will not be any hyper or hypothyroidism, but just the thyroid swelling. But in case of a toxic goiter, it's usually a thyroid swelling associated with the hyperactivity of the thyroid hormones. So goiter is nothing but an enlarged thyroid gland. It can be diffuse or nodular. So it can be a diffuse thyroid swelling, or it can be in form of nodules. So depending upon that, so this is typically a multinodular goiter, and this is a diffuse swelling, diffuse thyroid swelling. The abnormal growth can cause various compressive syndromes as well. So it can compress onto the underlying um, respiratory tract or nerves, etc. So it can produce various compressive syndromes based on the size. And thyroid function can be normal, so that it's called as a simple goiter or a colloid goiter or a non-toxic goiter. It can be an overactive, so that it's called as a toxic goiter. And sometimes the thyroid swelling can be underactive, so that it's a hypothyroid goiter. So this we have already seen. Common causes of thyroid enlargement includes iodine deficiency, which is most commonest, especially in poor countries where there is less iodine supplementation. But with the advent of iodized salt and other measures to supplement the iodine, nowadays the prevalence of iodine deficiency is comparatively less in the developing and developed world. And the next common condition that leads to thyroid swelling is Hashimoto's thyroiditis and Graves' disease. Both are autoimmune conditions where Hashimoto's usually presents with hypothyroidism and Graves usually presents with hyperthyroidism. This we have to keep in mind. Both of these conditions are autoimmune pathologies. However, Hashimoto's usually presents with hypothyroid features and Graves presents with hyperthyroid features. And then there is familial or sporadic multinodular goiter, and there is a follicular adenoma, colloid nodular cyst in the thyroid, and thyroid malignancies. So signs and symptoms of goiter include sometimes this may be identified incidentally by the patient or a relative or by a physician during a routine physical examination. Sometimes the patient can present with features of local compression like dysphagia, dysphonia, dyspnea, etc. Or sometimes the patient can have hemorrhage, inflammation, necrosis, or a malignant transformation of the swelling. And obviously, if the patient has a altered hormone status or if the secretory function is altered in either way, the patient can present with features of hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism. So the diagnostic workup usually includes estimation of the TSH, which is the best thing that we can do, and a free T3 and T4. Then the thyroid antibodies, anti-TPO, anti-TG, and TRAB, and ultrasound scan, CT, MRI, or fine needle aspiration cytologies, or even there are various other measures like iodine scan, etc. That iodine take up scan that can be done to identify various thyroid pathologies. But this is only a general one. First, let us look into hypothyroidism. So, hypothyroidism is a common endocrine disorder resulting from deficiency of the thyroid hormone. And most common causes include iodine deficiency. Iodine, we know iodine is a substrate to produce the thyroid hormone. So, if this substrate is deficient, then the patient can develop hypothyroidism. And the second commonest cause is autoimmune thyroid disease, which is nothing but Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Signs and symptoms of the patients with the hypothyroidism includes fatigue, loss of energy, lethargy, weight gain, decreased appetite, cold intolerance, dry skin, hair loss, sleepiness, muscle pains, joint pains, and weakness in the extremities, depression, emotional lability, forgetfulness, constipation, menstrual disturbances in terms of usually it's found as menorrhagia, impaired fertility, decreased perspiration, paresthesias or nerve entrapment syndromes like carpal tunnel syndromes, blurred vision, decreased hearing, and fullness in the throat and hoarseness of the voice. In case of Hashimoto, some specific indicators like feeling of fullness in the throat, painless thyroid enlargement, exhaustion, transient neck pain, sore throat, etc. can be found. But these are not common. But I'm sorry, it's not like common. It cannot be specific, but it's usually found in patients with the Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Physical signs include weight gain, slowed speech, dry skin, pallor, coarse, brittle, and straw-like hair, loss of scalp hair, axillary hair, pubic hair, or a combination, dull facial expression, coarse facial features, periorbital puffiness, macroglossia, goiter, hoarseness of voice, decreased blood pressure, bradycardia, pericardial effusion, abdominal distension or ascites, hypothermia, non-pitting edema, which is it's called as mixed edema, pitting edema of the lower extremities, hyporeflexia with delayed relaxation, ataxia, or both. So there is no rule that all these features should be present in hypothyroidism. However, these features are found in varying intensities in different patients depending upon the duration and severity of the deficiency of thyroid hormones. It's no rule that all these symptoms should be present in every patient. So this has to be kept in mind. And also, the features of hypothyroidism differs depending upon the age at which the hypothyroidism ensues. For example, if it is in the early childhood, we know that there is a condition known as cretinism, which is the result of standard growth. In adults, usually it presents as mixed edema. So the workup of a patient suspected of hypothyroidism includes TSH, which is the most sensitive screening tool, because a raised TSH obviously indicates primary hypothyroidism, because since the thyroid is not producing enough T3 and T4, the pituitary tries to stimulate the thyroid more so that it secretes more TSH. So a raised TSH with a patient with raised TSH and clinical features of hypothyroidism can be considered as having primary hypothyroidism. Next is, if the TSH is raised, then the next best thing that can be done is to look for free T4, because these T3 and T4 are circulated in the blood in a protein bound form, and some are in the free form. So the free is the active form, and we have learned that the uh, T4 is being converted into T3 in most of the tissues. So if we assess the T4, and if the T4 is deficient, then it indicates that there is hypothyroidism. The body will try to keep the levels of T3 in normal as far as possible. So the first to be affected will be the free T4, because most of the T4 will be converted into the T3. So with a reduced T4 itself, we can identify hypothyroidism. So there is no need of unnecessary expenditure in the form of patient's financial uh, status, so that there is no need of going for any T3 and T4 as such. You can go for a free T4. That will be sufficient to diagnose a case of hypothyroidism. So routinely a T3 measurement is not recommended in case of hypo, but however in hyper, T3 is recommended. And also we have already discussed that Hashimoto's thyroiditis is commonest cause for hypothyroidism. So we can also write for the thyroid autoantibodies, that is anti-TPO and anti-TG. So elevated TSH with a decreased free T4 is usually the finding in case of hypothyroidism. There can be patients with elevated TSH but with normal free T4. So such cases can be considered as subclinical hypothyroidism, and if not managed properly, these patients can also end up in established hypothyroidism. In case of Hashimoto's, usually the autoantibodies will come positive, anti-TP or anti-thyroid peroxidase antibody, and anti-TG or anti-thyroglobulin antibodies will become positive in patients. But what happens is, during the due course of the time, these antibodies may also disappear. So Hashimoto's diagnosing Hashimoto's is a clinical challenge. If these are done in the early stages of the illness, we can find it, but in some cases in later stages, this may become absent as well. Next is regarding hyperthyroidism. So again, hyperthyroidism are set of disorders resulting from excess synthesis and secretion of thyroid hormones and leads to hypermetabolic condition or called as thyrotoxicosis. So the most common forms of hyperthyroidism are diffuse toxic goiter or Graves' disease, toxic multinodular goiter or Plummer disease, and toxic adenoma. Adenoma is nothing but abnormal growth. The common symptoms of hyperthyroidism includes nervousness, anxiety, increased perspiration, heat intolerance, hyperactivity, palpitations. So whatever features we have seen in hypo, the patient will have exactly opposite manifestations in case of hyperthyroidism. So the common signs, these are very important clinically, because this typical stare of the patient is a clinical diagnostic clue in case of hypothyroidism. So the patient will have tachycardia or arrhythmias, systolic hypertension with wide pulse pressure, warm, moist and smooth skin, lid lag, stare, hand tremor, muscle weakness, weight loss despite increased appetite, and reduction in the menstrual flow or oligomenorrhea. The eye signs are very important. So typically the patient may present with exophthalmos, and there are various signs explained. For example, von Graffi's sign, where upper eyelid lags behind the eyeball as the patient is asked to look downwards. Stellwag's sign, where infrequent and incomplete blinking and with a staring look. Dalrymple's sign, where the upper sclera is visible due to the retraction of the upper eyelid. Geoffroy's sign, where there is absence of the creases on the forehead on the superior gaze. Mobius sign, where there is difficulty to converge the eyeballs. And Gifford's sign, where there is difficulty in eversion of the upper lid. So these are some of the, there are other signs as well, but these are some of the important signs that we can use in diagnosing hyperthyroidism. So again, as in case of hypothyroidism, in hyper also there can be variation in the manifestation or presentation. So different patients come with the different types of presentations. So usually in younger patients, they exhibit more of sympathetic activation like hyperactivity, tremor or anxiety. In older patients, more pronounced cardiovascular symptoms may be present. And in patients with Graves' disease, they have more marked features of thyrotoxicosis. And this ophthalmopathy is again very common in case of Graves' disease. So where there is periorbital edema and proptosis or exophthalmos, this usually is found in Graves' disease. Again, the diagnostic workup includes TSH, which obviously the TSH will be less because of the negative feedback. Whenever there is increased activity of T3 and T4, the negative feedback will impair the TSH secretion, so the TSH will be less. And a free T4 or free thyroxine index can be checked into, and T3 also can be checked. So usually a patient will have reduced TSH with high values of T3 and T4. So suppressed TSH levels with elevated T3 and T4, and in some patients with milder thyrotoxicosis, only there will be an elevation of T3. And if a patient has normal T3 and T4 levels and decreased TSH, this can be a case of subclinical hyperthyroidism. In case of Graves' disease, as we have discussed that it's an autoimmune disease, this antibody, that is thyroid stimulating antibody or TSAB, it's also known as long-acting thyroid stimulator or LATS or TSH receptor antibody. A positive test for this antibody is usually specific for Graves' disease. And also in some patients, there will be elevation of anti-TPO antibodies. Usually this is found in Hashimoto's, but in some patients of Graves, this antibody also will be positive. However, it is non-specific for diagnosing Graves' disease. And in case of toxic multinodular goiter, there will be features of hyperthyroidism, but the patient will not have these antibodies. So this is an important differentiating factor between Graves' disease and toxic multinodular goiter. And in case of toxic adenoma also, these antibodies are low or absent. So this absence of antibodies and the patient's features, if it suggests hyperthyroidism, then we have to look away from Graves and look for either toxic multinodular goiter or toxic adenoma. So that is regarding uh, hyper and hypothyroidism. Before finishing off, let us compare the features of hyper and hypothyroidism. So in general, there is increased appetite in hyper, but normal or reduced appetite in hypo. There is weight loss in hyper and weight gain in hypo. Heat intolerance, cold intolerance. And the patient will have a feeling of rundown or exhaustion. And in case of nervous system, in increased nervousness, calmness, sleeplessness, drowsy or sleepy. Mental competence okay or normal, here it is dull or confused. Hand tremors, no tremors. Anxiety, depression. Palpitation, usually it's not present. Tachycardia, here bradycardia. High BP, here is low BP. But in some patients, it can be hypertension as well. No edema, here there is edema. There is a fast transit of food leading to increased stool frequency. Here it is indigestion. Frequent bowel movements. Here it is constipation. In case of skin, it's warm and smooth. Here it is cold and dry. Here it's increased perspiration. Here it decreased sweating. Increased nail growth, brittle nails. Weakness. Here cramps and aches. Here it's low cholesterol levels, high cholesterol levels, and anemia. So we can see that most of the features are opposite. In case of Ayurveda, usually people compare thyroid swelling with that of Galaganda. But Galaganda is only a feature, and we know that Acharyas have not mentioned much features, clinical feature or systemic features for Galaganda. Why that is because most, as we have discussed in modern part itself, most of the patients will have involvement of multiple systems, and that too in a highly variable way. In some patients, some features are predominant, in others they are not predominant. So what we have to do is, basically the disorders of thyroid is considered under the abnormality of Dhatu Agni. Of course, the Koshtagni will be involved, but mainly of Dhatu Agni. So the patients can present with under multiple disease spectrums explained in Ayurveda. For example, some of the patients we may diagnose it as Pandu. In some cases, we may diagnose it as Grahani or Atyagni. And in some patients, we may diagnose in terms of Shosha. So again, all these things depends upon the presenting feature in the patient, so that we cannot give a one label diagnosis for hyper or hypothyroidism. Usually, hypothyroidism presents with the kapha and vada and ama features, but we have seen pitta features as well. So again, that depends, but predominantly kapha, vada, and ama features. And in case of hyperthyroidism, usually patients will have pitta and vada features. Again, there are exceptions, but this is only a general idea. So the diagnosis always should depend upon identifying the predominant dosha and involved dosha, which in turn is based on the assessment of lakshanas in the given patient. So that is why identifying this dosha and dosha based on the lakshana assessment is mandatory for treating hyper and hypothyroidism. So that is regarding the disease Galaganda and conditions pertaining to the thyroid gland.